Are you ready? Yes. Are you ready?
Hi, I'm Michael Homula, and thanks for hanging out with us here at Pulling the Cork. Today on PTC TV, we're in the fifth part of our series on how to taste and talk wine. We've talked about what you see, we've talked about what you smell, and we've talked about what you taste, and now it's time to get into the big finish and overall impressions. The final step in evaluating your wine and writing your wine tasting note is to look at the overall finish of the wine, the balance of the wine, and the overall complexity of a wine. This helps you to draw some of your final conclusions on the overall quality of the wine and whether or not you like it. Finish refers to the length of time a wine's flavors kind of linger and hang around inside of your mouth after you've swallowed it. The finish can be short, moderate, or long in length. The longer the finish, the better the wine, as long as the flavors that you're getting are pleasant and you like them. Although a short wine is usually considered inferior in quality to a longer finishing wine, it still may be a good wine and enjoyable to drink. There are times and places for all kinds of wines, from good to great. But a wine with a short finish, by definition, can't be considered great or extraordinary. A long finish is one of the key elements in determining the difference between good and great wine. In examining the finish, you not only want to pay attention to how long the finish is, but you also want to pay attention to the residual flavors that are lingering and hanging around on the back of your palate after you've swallowed the wine. So what you're going to do is the same things we've talked about in all of our previous episodes. You're going to go ahead and swallow the wine down. And I'm paying attention now to how long the finish is lasting. Sometimes you might even want to just time it. Get out a timer or look at a second hand on the clock and watch how long the finish lasts. I'm also taking the time to look at what are the residual flavors that are being left over on the back end of my palate. The next thing we want to examine is the balance of the wine. A wine is balanced or harmonious when no single structural element, the acidity, the alcohol, the sweetness, or the tannins in red wine, stick out. Think of all of the instruments in an orchestra playing together in harmony. If any one of them is standing out, it's really not enjoyable to listen to. If the trumpeter is just blowing his own thing and not really integrated with the rest of the orchestra, it's a pretty hideous sound. So that's what we mean by balance. Nothing is standing out and nothing is disjointed. If one element of the wine is standing out, it's usually called unbalanced, disjointed, lacks harmony, any number of those types of descriptors. When we talk about balance in a white wine, the key elements are acidity, alcohol, and sweetness or fruit. Sweetness refers to the taste that you're getting from the residual sugars in wine, and fruit refers to the flavors of ripe fruit in the wine. The elements kind of have some of these types of relationships. Acidity is balanced by alcohol and sweetness and fruit flavors in the wine. A white wine that is in balance will feel refreshing and lively on the palate, which is why you sometimes hear me refer or write about a wine being alive or really bright. It shouldn't be too tart, nor should it be cloyingly sweet, nor should it have a lot of heat from alcohol, that burning sensation. An overly acidic white wine will get really puckery and sour and tart in your mouth and really not be an enjoyable kind of mouthfeel. A white wine with too much alcohol will feel hot in the mouth and the back of the throat, much like a brandy or a cognac or drinking straight up vodka, which some of you might like, but that really doesn't mean that the wine is in balance. An overly sweet wine will feel what we call cloying or sweet or sticky and heavy on your palate, and that means it's out of balance. When a red wine is out of balance, some of these things are really evident. Overly tannic reds, where the tannins are just really standing out like a sore thumb, will feel really rough and astringent and just really taste kind of bitter on the palate. Overly acidic red wines will feel sharp and taste very tart, much like a white wine. Overly alcoholic wines, just like the whites, will burn and leave a lot of heat on the back of the palate as it goes down your throat, like you're drinking alcohol or brandy or something like that. As with a long finish, regardless of whether you're drinking a white wine or a red wine, balance is a key element to the overall quality of a wine. If a wine is out of balance, it's not a good quality wine. If it's in balance, it's usually a sign of a very good quality drink. Now we're on to complexity. By definition, All great wines are complex. Each offers many different aromas and many different flavors. A wine is particularly complex if it has layers of flavors that just keep jumping out with you the more you drink the wine. Basically, if every time you take a sip or every time you smell the wine, you get another unique flavor or another unique aroma or another unique bouquet profile on the wine. As the wine evolves in the glass, if it starts to reveal some secondary flavors and some secondary aromas, that is a complex wine. In contrast, a wine with very few aromas, very little bouquet, very few flavors is usually called simple or basic. Wine does not have to be complex in order to be enjoyable. Sometimes it's just enough to enjoy a good wine that isn't overly complex and it's just a nice drinking wine. That said, to truly be considered great or extraordinary and the great wines of the world, you have to have complexity. The best wines in the world are all complex in nature. That wraps up the big finish and overall impressions. What you're going to do is you're going to evaluate for length of finish, you're going to evaluate for the balance of the wine, is everything singing in the same chorus, is everything kind of in harmony, and then you're going to also look at complexity. Is the wine complex? Does it offer multiple flavors and aromas and bouquets in the wine? All of those things you want to be writing down in your tasting notes so that you ultimately get a really good overall impression of the quality of the wine and whether or not the wine is the kind of wine you're going to come back to drink. Thanks again for hanging out with us here on PTC TV and Pulling the Cork. Get ready for our next episode, which is The Score. If you want to do it, we're going to teach you how to score a wine. Thanks again, and cheers.
3 minutes and we're out of here. The clock is ticking and we're in the clear. We got 3 minutes and we're out of here. We got 3 minutes and we're out.